Hey everyone, some big news. We have a new title sponsor. Great! Say hello to Gamers Dreamland, your new go to spot for Magic the Gathering singles. Whether you're chasing that one last card for your deck, hunting for a classic for your collection, or just browsing, Gamers Dreamland has you covered. TCG Gold Seller, highly rated, trusted, and even better, fans of the podcast, which means every time you buy through them, you're not just getting great cards, you're also supporting the show, which I couldn't be happier about. Here's how it works. Just go to gamersdreamland.com or hit the link in the show notes. When you use that link, you'll automatically get 10% off your order. No code needed, no hassle, right to you, the savings. It's a win-win. You get your great singles, save some cash, and of course, support the show while you're at it. So head to gamersdreamland.com today, browse, buy, build, and support. Gamers Dreamland, your online LGS. Chapter 7. The infirmary wing granted to Yawgmoth had a glorious view of the upper city. Through a high bank of windows, the Thran temple shone down over every apparatus. Minute images of Rebecca and her workers were cast in tiny rainbows of refracted light throughout the room. They swam slowly across the backs of the 24 clustered observers, across the bent neck of Yawgmoth, and across the agonized face of Glacian. "Bad enough, you murder me tissue by tissue," Glacian growled as Yawgmoth gingerly peeled another layer of skin from a large lesion on the man's stomach. "But to do it with all public sanction." "You see these layers here?" Yawgmoth asked the observers, who craned to see. In the past months, he had convinced them of the reality of the disease. "See, even an organ as seemingly simple as skin has differentiated layers, different tissues for different functions. The body is an organism, that is, a thing composed of organs. Each has a distinct role. Disease and dysfunction are not a matter of magic, but a breakdown of one or more organs." Yawgmoth returned to the lesion, peeling back flesh. "Do you see how the thysis has different effects in the different levels?" "There's a similar theory about magic these days," said a young man. Zod was a healer in the traditional sense, trained to apply arcane power to mundane diseases. He was precocious, talkative, and to Yawgmoth's mind, blithely wrong. Few folks are saying you can separate magic energy into components, each performing a different function. It's like one of these little bits of rainbow floating around the room, red, green, blue. They say mana is made up of colors, some for healing, some for destroying. "What does any of that have to do with disease?" Yawgmoth asked testily. "You've seen how magical healing only accelerates the thysis?" Zod's shoulders slumped. "Just a comparison. I mean, nobody really believes magic has colors. It's just a wild theory. You were talking about how thysis has different effects on different tissues, and I was thinking how they say the different colors have different effects and are blocked by different things." "Would you shut up about—" Yawgmoth began. His scalpel quivered in his hand, flayed skin adhering to it. A new light entered his eyes. "What was that about being blocked?" Shrugging sheepishly, the man said, "Just more crackpot ideas." "No. Tell me." "Well, they say iron blocks some magic and silver other magic and gold other. It's basically the five great metals. More nonsense." Yawgmoth stared for an abstracted moment at the scalpel he held and on the blackened tissue that adhered to it. The flesh turned translucent as it lay on the blade. He set the scalpel down on a small table. "Just nonsense?" Zod repeated. "That's what they thought of me a few years ago." Yawgmoth lurched up from his seat. The observers were used to his volcanic motions and fell back from him, giving room. Yawgmoth strode to the table where Glacian lay, reached the implement cabinet, and drew drawers open violently. He rummaged among the knives and clamps and saws, plucking some out and setting them atop a cabinet. "What are you doing?" Zod asked. "There's not enough rust on any of these," Yawgmoth growled. He looked up with sudden inspiration. "The iron rail on the balcony. Go. Take a knife and plate and scrape off some rust." "Me?" Zod asked. You're the one who gave me an idea, and the rest of you dig in your pockets. I need silver and gold, copper, 3 coins each." Dumbfounded, the other observers reached reluctantly into their robe pockets while the young healer darted out the door to gathered rust. Come on, Yawgmoth urged. "Don't be cheap. This is a cure we're concocting here." The youth on the balcony gave out a shout. "Something's happening out here. Riot. Untouchables, rioting." The crowd of observers pressed toward the door. Yawgmoth waded past them, impatient. He reached the door and saw it. Ragcloth untouchables swarmed the streets. Even as he watched, a prisoner clubbed a woman in the head. She went down, blood spreading across the stone road. 2 other citizens ran, only to have untouchables swarm them like a dog pack, rip off their flowing robes and pile on top of them. Rocks shattered windows, fires leapt up across rooftops. Screams came from bashed doors. Zod vomited on the balcony. "Scrape that rust!" Yawgmoth demanded. "Our work is more important. The infirmary has guards. The city has guards. This is their concern. Ours is a cure." Protests began from the delegates. Yawgmoth silenced them, pointing violently over their head. Look! Look at the skin under those rags. Do you see that, Thysis? That's why they're rioting. The Hellside Guard can fight them back today, but we have the only weapon that can stop these revolts forever. Now scrape that rust!" Gix laughed. He'd torn this iron rod from a grate in the sewer. Already it had killed 5, now 6, 7. The little jag of metal at the end of the rod made a nice claw for ripping open backs. These citizens were soft. Beneath their finery, they came apart like a white cavefish, now 8. For all the ruthless oppression of soldiers, for all of Glacian's brutal words and Yawgmoth's brutal deeds, the other Hellsites were no more formidable than ripe grapes, now 9. Gix ran up the steep sloping street. 20 untouchables followed him. Gix smashed a house window. Through it, he screamed a challenge of animal fury. Another untouchable flung a half-full rain barrel into the same house. He rounded the corner. The homeowner was spilling, half-dressed and furious, out of his front door. Gix charged him. The man gaped a moment. Eyes and mouth formed circles of surprise. He clutched his disheveled robes and dived back toward his door. Modesty cost him his life. Gix's iron rod sank into the man's back. A flash of memory, Yawgmoth and his scalpels patiently and tediously cutting. This is no careful surgery. Gix yanked. The man lurched but did not go down, clinging to the doorposts. 2 untouchables grappled his arms and pried them loose. Gix yanked again. The man fell, an invader on each arm. Gix stepped back. The bald head struck a tile step and seemed an egg with a red yolk. Now 10. A shout came from above. Soldiers, the Hellside Guard. At last they had arrived. They wore white and bore blunt-ended polearms. There were no need of fiercer weapons in the sedate Halcyon. Helmets and face masks were painted steel with gold glit. Gleaming shoulder pieces, breastplates, and thigh plates were sewn onto the white regalia. Bug-like behind their staring masks, the Hellside Guard were clothed to scare off opponents, not engage them. Gix was little impressed. They looked like noble boys, fencing gear. Fear, not fury, lurked in those masked eyes. Gix knew what lurked in his eyes. He screamed to charge. The untouchables surged up behind him. 20 fanatics against 10 guards. A polearm arced out toward Gix. He paused to let the staff sweep by. He gripped it, hauled hard. The soldier toppled. Gix's rod descended. Now 11, now 12, 13. Another band of untouchables welled up a nearby street. Gix greeted them with a bloody smile. Smoke rolled to the sky. Bodies littered the cobbles. Their leader, a burly brute, shouted gleefully,
"What's next, Master Gix? What's next?"
Gix's grin deepened. He jabbed a finger upward.
"To the heights, my friend. We'll tear down the very heights."
Yawgmoth and 4 observers stood behind the barred south door of the infirmary. Yawgmoth wore his travel cloak, his belt of swords, though he had handed 4 of them to the men and women standing behind. The 5th and largest he kept for himself.
"Get ready to defend the door. Do not bar it until I return."
Zod protested.
"You expect us to kill?"
"I expect you to die if you don't," Yawgmoth said simply. Without another word, he heaved the bar from its brackets, swung the door wide open, and strode into the chaotic street. Untouchable bands loped up the hill like shabby wolf packs. They stepped over or on the dead citizens who laid there. One man glimpsed Yawgmoth, charged him. The rioter hurled a spiked board toward his head. Yawgmoth casually batted it away, noted the absence of lesions on the man, and took off his head. Quick swipe. As the rebel tumbled in two bloody halves at his feet, Yawgmoth clucked. Not a good candidate? He looked up the street for a better one. He spotted a scrawny man covered with lesions and too little clothing to hide them. The wretched figure stooped above a Hellsite woman who wept over her dead husband. The Untouchable's intent was clear. Perfect. Yawgmoth strode through a stream of rebels, killing any who attacked him. He wrapped a muscled arm around a scrawny man's neck and hauled him into the air. When the Untouchable kicked and screamed, he couldn't break free. Yawgmoth's sword carved a path back toward the infirmary, and his prisoner provided a shield before him. Yawgmoth arrived before a trembling crew. Two rebels lay dead just outside the door. They had been dragged that far, their heads painting crimson paths across the threshold. Zod's sword tip was crimson. They tried to break in. All I could think of, what if they reached Glacian? Excellent work, Yawgmoth said simply as he strode through the door and started up the stairs. Close it, bar it again. He ascended. The rebel's kicks were slowing. He was blacking out. Yawgmoth had been careful not to break the man's neck or crush his windpipe. He needed a subject who was, aside from the phthisis, relatively healthy. Reaching the experiment chamber, Yawgmoth flung back the door and declared, I have a subject. Is the mixture ready? Healers looked up from a small iron pan, wisps of steam coming from a watery concoction. No sign of the metal fragments. They are dissolved. The liquid is cleared and thinned, but it's still hot. It'll cool enough when you decant it. Drop 2 bladders of it, one for the test subject and one for the genius. Yawgmoth ordered as he flung a now unconscious rebel onto a table. The man landed on his back and sprawled in the cold wood. Zod and his 3 comrades entered the room. Yawgmoth ordered, You 4, hold down the limbs. He'll probably awaken once the injection is given. Don't let him get away. Fevered determination showed in Zod's face. No, we won't let him get away. Yawgmoth gestured toward the others. Bring up one of the antidote bladders and someone draw another bladder from a vial of poison there on the windowsill. The observer approached and handed a needle-tipped bladder to Yawgmoth. Here's the first of the antidote bladders. Yawgmoth took the item, feeling the warmth of the serum through the leathery walls that encased it. He probed for a vein in the man's neck, found it, inserted the needle, and slowly squeezed the contents of the bladder into it. Soon the bag was emptied. Yawgmoth drew the needle forth. Look at that, Zod declared, nodding toward the lesions on the man's belly. The black spots were visibly receding. It looked as though something within the skin picked away each blemish, particle by particle. In moments, the spots were only pink, puckered sores. The black rot was gone. It's happening everywhere. Shoulders, face, legs. Yawgmoth smiled. Resistance. We are bolstering the patient's resistance. Metal particles suspended in the serum block magical energies across their spectrum. It's these magical energies that are causing tissue breakdown. The serum blocks those, at least while it remains in the blood, and allows tissue to begin healing. A cure! Zod shouted. I can't believe it! We created a cure! I created a cure, Yawgmoth corrected. A cure based on your inspirations and my ridiculous notions about disease. There were coughs around the table. A few observers even muttered they had not thought his methods ridiculous or even odd. Besides, it is not a cure, only a treatment to fight back the disease temporarily. We shall have to see how long these effects last. All attention shifted to the patient. His eyes rolled open. The scrawny rebel looked around fearfully. He struggled to get up, but Zod and his comrades held him. Where am I? What are you doing? The man shrieked. You're in the Halcyon Infirmary, Yawgmoth said levelly. What I am doing is healing you. Healing me? Why would you heal me? Yawgmoth shrugged, motioning toward the woman who had drawn up the bladder of poison. She approached. He took it from her. Healing you was just an incidental occurrence of the riots. It wasn't anything personal. Just like the rape and murder you perpetrated. Nothing personal, just an incidental occurrence. The man gabbled. Well, I'm glad you think so. And now, for your crimes, I revoke the life I gave to you. None of his previous gentility, Yawgmoth sank the needle into the man's neck and squeezed. Immediately, the patient convulsed, bucking on the tabletop. Zod and the others held on tightly, making sure he did not escape. The fight was brief. The man slumped, his breath left in a long gurgle. Then he was utterly still. Most of the observers backed away in dread. Even 3 of the 4 who held his limbs let go and recoiled. Only Zod clung on, determination and terror mixing in him. Yawgmoth snorted. Let's see about treating our genius. While the genius of Halcyon was infused with an antidote for his disease, the rest of Halcyon was infused with destruction and death. Untouchables ruled the streets. The Hellsite Guard fought hopelessly against overwhelming numbers. Many of them lay dead. Here and there, bodies burned. Everywhere, buildings burned. The city that had stood impregnable for 200 years was now under siege from within. Those who had for so long shut death away from themselves were now immersed in it. The sewers, scabrous, violent, and hideous monsters had emerged. They rose in a reeking tide up the 8 terraces. They slew any they encountered. Only in the last instance of life could the Hellsites see the eyes of their killers. No, these were not monsters. These were humans. These were Thran.